My name's Dr. Carlton Savory. I go by Carl. I'm a retired colonel in the United States Army. At the time of Operation Eagle Claw, I was a lieutenant colonel and was in charge or the chief medical officer and responsible for all of the medical support of the entire operation. It was quite an experience and probably one of the high points of my career to be involved with the unit when it was first becoming a unit. It was stood up in November of 77, and I got involved in March of 79, so within a year, and they had no medical support. I was tasked with developing the concepts and all of the medical support to support their mission. And this was before the Iranian hostage situation. But at that time, it was a very small unit, and I was fortunate enough to be involved peripherally, and then as things evolved, I got to be more involved. And I have to say that the initial people that were there were some of the finest NCOs and officers and civilians that I had met in the military in my career thus far, and continue to be. So it was not only an honor, but it was really I guess it was an extra duty for me. I was the chief of orthopedics at the local hospital there, but everything I did for Delta was basically after hours on weekends and whatnot, and it became, probably the most significant part of my life during those almost 7 years or 8 years, however many it was. 44 years, as have most of us, to reflect on it. And I actually, when I first gave my first presentation after it was declassified, the talk was the what ifs. If we had been successful, what would have, how would it have changed? And a lot of the things that we have today would have, if they came along, which they probably would have been significantly delayed. The failure of the mission brought out a number of inadequacies in our military and our special operations capabilities. And I think the lessons learned ramped up very quickly, incredible response that exists today, and only it's more sophisticated, and probably is more needed today than it was back then, because of the type of situations our country finds itself in. I was an infantry officer during Vietnam before I went to medical school, and when I was able to be involved in this, along with a lot of other Vietnam veterans that were in the unit, I think we all looked at this as a way to not atone, but to bring the military back to where it should have been. In 1979, in 1980, military, you were sort of a second-class citizen. There was the Vietnam War ended in 75. There was a lot of negativity. The Army morale in general, I think you could say, was at a low point. And this represented, for me and for others, we've discussed it, an opportunity to maybe make it right. And it wasn't gray, and it wasn't a gray area. It was black and white. They had hostages they shouldn't have. There was no in between. This is wrong. And I think that kind of got off the track, but I think that those were things that came across. And as I reflect on them, very proud to have been part of the mission But we went from the high point as we loaded the planes to go on the mission, and then 24 hours later, the low point of my life. The whole plan was extremely complex from the very beginning. It was high risk. It was probably justified. We had a lot of constraints. I was fortunate to have been involved in the planning process from the beginning and was privy to most of all of the planning. And, as the medical planner and putting together the package, all I got was basically, "Are we okay, doc?" And everything, "Yeah, we're okay." I had very little supervision or input. I knew what we needed, and it was a very unique experience for me as a young surgeon to put all this together.